The concept of monitoring is the process of developing and analyzing data to count and/or identify specific program activities and operations. A basic monitoring evaluation is concerned with answering simple questions about program activities and nationwide. A good way to approach the problem is to ask the following questions: who is doing what, when, where and how often and with what resources? Basic monitoring information for a program has the following utilities. It provides operating and descriptive information for funders and other overseers of the program, for interested outsiders and most importantly for program staff and administrators. It provides the basic information necessary for comparing achievements to stated or desired objectives. It provides information for all involved in the program. Evaluation often will be undertaken for new programs, and the program participants or administrators will learn more about the process and impact of the program if monitoring data are available. They are usually glad to have the opportunity to review them, even if few surprises result. Basic monitoring data serves a preventive maintenance function, by tracking indicators of critical elements which, if they deviate too much from the expected norm, signal a program problem. Most program leaders or administrators collect this basic information. If done carefully and reviewed periodically, is evaluation of a basic sort. Comparisons are made between expectations and observed results, or at least data are relied on the set expectations. Comparative monitoring. In a comparative evaluation effort, basic monitoring data are collected for other similar programs, or for subjects in control groups which do not receive the intervention but are monitored for comparison purposes. The value of comparative monitoring information lies in the comparative perspective it provides. With basic monitoring information, the only comparison possible is internal to program-like comparison of program goals and objectives. Comparative monitoring also allows comparing performance with other programs. For example, if one program attains 90% R5 planned activities, while another program achieves more 95% to 100% or less 70% 05%, more had been learned than a simple internal check against program objectives. Strategic monitoring has to be considered as part of the planning and control system in which it is embedded, thus a transformation from traditional to strategic monitoring. The three approaches to monitoring may be described as 1. Implementation monitoring, 2. Impact monitoring, and 3. Strategic monitoring * implementation of activities according to plan monitoring. The model of monitoring used here relates to the assumption of a stable environment which is well understood and where there is a high degree of control over the situation planned. It is appropriate where there is a task to be completed and where little account need be taken of changes external to that task. Impact monitoring is associated with the managerial control level and is the model widely held by those concerned with monitoring. The assumptions here are that there is a fairly high level of control of the issues planned for. Strategic monitoring. In strategic planning and control there is a concern of coping with dynamic imperfectly understood, and imperfectly controlled environment, encompassing an unlimited number of potential fields of interest. The concern is that management control is no longer sufficient because the actual contingencies are not allowed for and because the unintended consequences require new policies. There is not only a need to be concerned information relevant to possible new policies, with information relevant to past policies but also to 4.2. The concept of evaluation is the systematic assessment of the worth or merit of some object or the systematic acquisition and assessment of information to provide useful feedback about some object. The term object could refer to a program, policy, technology, person, need. Both definitions agree that evaluation is a systematic endeavor, however, the second activity, and so on. Definition emphasizes acquiring and assessing information rather than assessing worth or merit because all evaluation work involves collecting and sifting data, making judgments about the validity of the information and of inferences derived from it, whether or not an assessment of worth or merit results. The goal of most evaluations is to provide useful feedback to a variety of audiences including sponsors, client groups, administrators, staff and other relevant constituencies. Most often, feedback is perceived as useful if it aids in decision-making. But the relationship between an evaluation and its impact is not a simple one. Studies that seem critical sometimes fail to influence short-term decisions, and studies that initially seem to have no influence can have a delayed impact when more congenial conditions arise. Despite this, there is broad consensus that the major goal of evaluation should be to influence decision-making or policy formulation through the provision of empirically driven feedback. Potential uses of evaluation: formative evaluation, assessing the needs, assets, and resources of an identified community to plan relevant and effective interventions within the community context, identifying the political environment, financial, strategic and structural context of the identified community to increase the likelihood that interventions will be supported by community leaders and organizations. These types of primary evaluation activities increases community participation, provide motivation for networking among community agencies, and promote new coalitions, partnerships. In later phases of the project, formative evaluation may focus on gathering contextual information to modify project plans and/or explain past identified risk problems. Identifying the financial, organizational, structural, systemic, political, social, and environmental strengths and weaknesses of the community and the project. Examining the impact of changing federal and state climates on project implementation and success. Identifying and maximizing strengths in development. Identifying and minimizing barriers to implementing activities. Determining if project goals match target population needs. Assessing whether available resources can sustain project activities. Measuring the performance and perceptions of the staff. Measuring the community's perception of the project. Determining the nature of interactions between staff and clients. Ascertaining the quality of services provided by the project. Documenting systemic change. Monitoring clients and other stakeholders' experiences with the project, and their satisfaction with and utilization of project services. Without such information, it will be difficult to make informed decisions about how to improve your project. Furthermore, if environmental barriers to project implementation are understood, seemingly trouble-D projects might be deemed successful based on the barrier they overcame. Summative evaluation. Summative evaluation can carry an important roles during CASH-PHASC of a project's development. Early on, you might focus summative evaluation on determining what outcomes you expect or hope for from the project, thinking through how individual participant, client outcomes connect to specific program or system-level outcomes. These types of early evaluation activities increase the likelihood that implementation activities are linked to the outcomes you are trying to achieve, and help staff and stakeholders stay focused on what changes you are really attempting to make in participants' lives. In later phases of project maturity, an effective summative evaluation process is critical to demonstrating the effectiveness of your project and making a case for its continued funding or for expansion, replication, answering questions about what works, for whom, and in what circumstances, and how to improve program delivery and services. Determining which activities and contextual factors are supporting or hindering outcomes and overall effectiveness. The goals of evaluation audiences, including sponsors, donors, client groups, administrators, staff and other relevant. The generic goal of most evaluation is to provide useful feedback to a variety of constituencies. Most often, feedback is perceived but the relationship between an evaluation and its impact is not a simple one. Studies that seem critical sometimes fail to influence short-term decisions, and studies that initially seem to have no influence can have a delayed impact when more congenial conditions arise. The major goal of evaluation should be to influence decision-making or policy formulation as useful if it aids in decision-making through the provision of empirically driven feedback. Evaluation strategies. 1. Scientific experimental models. Strategies that take their values and methods from the sciences, especially the social sciences. They prioritize on the desirability of impartiality, accuracy, objectivity and the most historically dominant evaluation, the validity of the information generated. 2. Management-oriented systems models. Two of the most common of these the program evaluation and review technique and CPM, the critical path method. Widely used in business and government in this country. It would also be IKED match to include the logical framework or logframic model, the UTOS model where U stands for units, T for treatments, O for observing observation and S for setting, and the CIPP model. C stands for content, I for input, the first P for process, the second P for product. These management-oriented systems models emphasize comprehensiveness in evaluation, placing evaluation within a larger framework of organizational activities. 3. Qualitative, anthropological models. They emphasize the importance of observation, the need to retain the phenomenological quality of the evaluation context, and the value of subjective human interpretation in the evaluation. 4. Participant-oriented models. Evaluation participants, especially clients and users of the program or technology, client-centered and stakeholder approaches are examples of participant-oriented models, as are consumer-oriented evaluation systems. Process. They emphasize the central importance of the guidelines of evaluation. There are only a few hard and fast rules when it comes to program evaluation. 1. Know who will use the results of your evaluation. 2. Always be aware of the resources available to you. 3. Make sure you ask the right questions. 4. If at all possible, use a control group. 5. Report what you find and don't report what you don't find. 6. Keep your evaluation focused. 7. Get help from experts when. 8. Be flexible. 9. Document everything you do. You need it. 10. A well-done process evaluation is better than a poorly done outcome impact assessment. 4.3. Designing a monitoring plan. Monitoring requires collection of data and their analysis. For this, an action plan in a monthly, quarterly, and annual timeframe is essential. Data collection will require choosing appropriate methods, which will depend upon the monitoring unit's time and physical and financial resources such as computerization and trained technical personnel for collecting and analyzing data. Monitoring methodologies can be perceived chain of distinguishable and sequential events comprising 1. Planning and design of the study, 2. Desk research, 3. Selection of methods, 4. Data collection and analysis, 5. Report writing, 6. Report presentation, and 7. Follow-up action. A detailed study program should be prepared within the prescribed time limit. A conceptual framework for monitoring. A conceptual framework for monitoring consists of 4 principal components: an extension organization, a monitoring and evaluation (M&E) unit, an information needs matrix, and a monitoring and evaluation cycle. Top management receives information from the monitoring unit and from other formal and informal sources. This influences program implementation, leads to better program planning, and ensures sustainability of extension programs. Ultimately, this leads to institutional development, which has been defined as the process of improving the ability of institutions to make effective use of available human and financial resources. Israel, 1987. Principles of monitoring. 1. Monitoring must be simple. A complex or complicated monitoring system is self-defeating. The basic task of monitoring is to simplify the field-level complexity, sifting the more important concerns from the less important. 2. Monitoring must be timely. Timeliness is of the essence in monitoring. Management requires input from the monitoring system so that timely action may be taken. AISO, timeliness is closely related to the credibility of monitoring itself. 3. Information provided must be relevant. It must concern itself only with parameters which are relevant to program objectives. This also ensures that monitoring does not generate information that is not used or is not usable by management. 4. Information provided through monitoring should be dependable. Management will rely on monitoring findings only if the information is believed to be reasonably accurate. 5. Monitoring efforts should be participatory. Effort should be made to ensure participation by all concerned with extension, be they field-level personnel, subject matter specialist, or extension's clients, the farmers. 6. Monitoring must be flexible. It is iterative in nature. It also gets routinized with the passage of time. These two features should not, however, lead to rigidity. 7. Monitoring should be action-oriented. Monitoring often leads to action. Consequently, it should follow pragmatic approaches, keeping the requirements of extension clients uppermost in view. Generating information for which there is no intended use should be assiduously avoided. 8. Monitoring must be cost-effective. Monitoring efforts cost money and time. It is therefore essential to make it cost-effective. While principles of simplicity, timelines, relevance, and accuracy will lead to cost-effectiveness, computerization also can help to make monitoring more cost-effective by reducing staffed hours in data processing. 9. Monitoring efforts should be top management-oriented. Monitoring units should keep in mind the requirements of top management when designing and operating a monitoring system. Yet at the same time, monitoring must take into account the fact that those who provide information to the system also must benefit, or the quality of the information provided will decline. 10. Monitoring units represent specialized undertakings. Monitoring is not merely concerned with the collection and analysis of data, but with diagnosing problems and suggesting alternative practical solutions. Monitoring and its main stakeholders. There are many stakeholders in monitoring efforts. The funding agency, usually Youth Ministry of Finance or Planning, wants to know that money has been spent properly. The Ministry of Agriculture wants to be able to say it has been efficient and effective. The target beneficiaries, that is, small and marginal farmers, want help from the organization and want to improve the quality of their lives. And non-governmental organizations, NGOs, need information generated by monitoring efforts and also want to contribute information. Thus there are four main stakeholders in monitoring: funding agencies, the implementing agency, beneficiaries, and NGOs, and their interests need to be taken into consideration when designing a system of monitoring. Frequency of monitoring. Monitoring is an ongoing continual exercise. Data collection involving crop production should be undertaken twice in a cropping season, at the time of sowing to obtain benchmark information and again at the time of harvest. The period of recall for collection of data should not be more than a month. Monitoring unit. The monitoring unit should be staffed by technical personnel having specialized skills. The staff often consists of extension specialists, economists, statisticians, computer programmers, and supporting staff. The head of the monitoring unit may come from any of these disciplines. The staff should be no larger than necessary to accomplish the work of the unit. The leader of the monitoring unit should report to one of the LOP managers in the organization. Specific, it should reflect changes only in the situation concerned. WHO, 1989 and 1987. Consistency, the value of indicators should stay constant so long as they are collected in identical conditions, no matter who does the collecting. Castley and Kumar, 1987. Indicators should be objective and verifiable. FAO, 1988. Sensitivity, indicators should be sensitive to changes in the situation being observed. ACC, 1984, p. 38. They should be sensitive enough to reflect changes in the phenomenon. FAO, 1988. Prioritization, indicators should be prioritized and a minimum feasible list prepared. Ga et al., 1988. Capability, effectiveness, efficiency, and impact. Our concepts are basic to monitoring and evaluation. They correspond, respectively, to operational investment, e.g., investment in agricultural extension per lamb family, operational efficiency, e.g., the number of visits, meetings, demonstrations, and trials per extension worker, technical efficiency, e.g., the number of adopters, hectareage, output, and value added, and extension-induced changes, e.g., production, productivity, income, and income distribution. Ruthenburg, 1985. Capability, effectiveness, and efficiency fall in the monitoring domain. Impact falls in the evaluation domain. Capability is the command that extension has over physical, financial and human resources, enabling it to serve its clients, the farmers. It is reflected by extension's outreach, intensity, technical competence, and physical and financial resources. Extension performance depends directly upon its capability. Effectiveness is defined by a handbook on productivity management as the degree to which goals are attained. Prokopenko, 1987. Agricultural extension has many goals such as social goals, e.g., farmer welfare, and economic goals, e.g., increased income. Among these, operational goals, e.g., physical and financial targets, are of special significance because their attainment makes realization of other goals possible. Efficiency in extension is usually measured by the rates at which fanners adopt recommended practices. Adoption rates of varying degrees of complexity can be conceived. Castley and Lurie, 1982. Impact in extension can be measured by a simple indicator, like yield of a crop per hectare, or by constructing simple productivity indices. Such indicators provide ultimate tests for the success of extension programs. Assignments and exercises. 1. Differentiate monitoring from evaluation. How do the two concepts complement and supplement each other? Present the unique characteristics of each. 2. Conceptualize a monitoring plan of an existing program in your locality. Cite the advantages of preparing such a plan. Prepare an evaluation design with all the important considerations highlighted. 3. How are program decisions made? What are the various functional models to consider? What are the various stages and steps to follow to ensure the implementation of a sound decision? Send a copy of your output to exercises to your professor. Thank you for watching Planning and Administering Agricultural Extension Programs Part 1 by the Agriculturo. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to my channel.